Welcome to the Refine and Shine, the podcast dedicated to mastering the art of continuous improvement and optimizing every aspect of your life. I'm Angelina Rivera, your host, and together we'll uncover the secrets to refining our lives, our habits, and our processes to unlock our inner brilliance. Join us on Refine and Shine, where we'll delve deep into achieving more in life without the burnout and without all the stress. This podcast is your platform for a more fulfilling life through continuous improvement and personal growth. In each episode, I and a diverse array of guests discuss practical strategies for up-leveling every aspect of your life. From developing good habits and organizing your space to refining your mindset and personal goals, we're going to explore it all. Our guests share personal stories about the systems they've developed or systems they've used and the tweaks they've made in their lives when refinement was needed, allowing them to truly shine. Listen to Refine and Shine to learn how you can implement continuous improvement techniques in your daily routine, develop and maintain healthy habits that lead to success and satisfaction, organize your life to reduce the stress and increase your productivity, foster a growth mindset that propels you to new heights. My mission is to inspire you to take bold action, make positive changes, and become the best version of yourself. Whether you're aiming to elevate your career, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, Refine and Shine is your guiding light. With over 25 years of experience in continuous improvement, I help businesses streamline their processes, establish efficient work areas, and implement standard work protocols. I have trained over 600 individuals and teams in process improvement, optimizing workflows, and enhancing overall operational efficiency. Tune in every week as we embark on an enlightening journey, exploring paths to refinement and illuminating the way to shine in every area of our lives. Subscribe now and join us on this journey to polish your life and let your best self shine through. Thank you for joining us on Refine and Shine. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Refine and Shine podcast. I am so excited for my guest today. I actually recently was just on her podcast, so you'll need to check it out. But my guest is Louise Kirk. She is a woman's visibility and confidence coach, a speaker and host of the Visible and Unstoppable podcast. She specializes in helping women overcome the fear of being seen, speak with confidence, and grow their business through connection, not just hustle. Louise teaches a simple visibility approach that helps women borrow audiences, build trust, and show up with courage so they can be recognized, respected, and paid for the work they love. So thank you, Louise, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Am I saying that right? Is it Louise or
Yes, Louise.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So thank you so much for being here today. And me and you have had a couple of conversations, and I just love what you do. And I just wanted to know what made you like visibility. Like that's something people struggle with. Why did you get into visibility as your main thing to help people see?
Yeah. So for me, it's kind of been one of those journeys, you start your business and then it kind of evolves. But what I found it was both an experience I had for myself, but what I could see so many other women struggling with and my clients struggling with was this great fear of visibility. And so they would invest in all the strategies, they knew what they had to do, maybe they were even kind of showing up, but they were really afraid. They were so afraid to actually step out of their, bubble because of that fear of being more visible. And usually it comes down to that fear of judgment or rejection. But this is also something I see with women in general, right? It's not just inside that space. It's the women who don't stand and put their hand up at work to say, whether that's they have an idea or to make a complaint or to just use their voice, they often don't actually want to be really visible because they fear so deeply the consequences of that.
I so agree. I remember for a long time that was something I would hide, And in fact, one of my affirmations I kept writing is, I'm no longer hiding, I'm no longer hiding. And, you and I both do podcasts. And, sometimes, like for me in my podcast, I share personal stories just like I am now. And the thing is, I didn't want to get like I had a fear of doing my podcast because I didn't want people to say like, "Who is she? She used to have a speech impediment when she was younger. She was born in the project. She was born in poverty. Like she doesn't know what she's talking about." And the thing is that we don't have to have it all together to start being seen. We can just the first step is to love ourselves and figure out what is the thing that is holding us back. Like what is it that and get some clarity work on that as well. What is it? And one of the things I find that's so fascinating is that when we're so scared of people judging us, like we have that in our minds, like people are looking at you, you've gained too much weight, you shouldn't do this, and all these things. And half the time they may not even notice. They're so wrapped up in their own stuff that they may not even notice the things that you're so insecure about. And so I think that that is something that women need is to find a coach that will help them see through those things. And so kind of tell me, like, how do you do your coaching and what's all behind that?
So for me, for my coaching, I support women in two different ways. So the first and fundamental way is building that confidence to be seen, because that, as I said, is the biggest thing that holds any woman back from implementing anything. And this is so broad for so many people. And this is why it's so important to get really clear and specific as to like for yourself, what that is. And so I think you touched on one of the common things of like, well, who am I to? Like, who am I to launch a podcast? Like, who's going to want to listen to me? I've not made millions of dollars. I haven't written a book. I'm not fit. No one knows me. So who would want to listen to me? Or how could I do the reels because I'm not that beautiful or I'm not that whatever it is. And ultimately that's, as I said, the biggest thing. And then the second thing I help women with is a bit more around that strategy component where they are kind of just sick of a lot of the information out there for growing your visibility is all around like, just get more followers, just get more reach. And there's an element of like, obviously needing to get out to more people, but often what people then focus on is the follower count, the likes, and women typically then don't necessarily see that this translate into clients or translate into sales. I remember spending so much of my time and energy growing my following, and I was like, woo, I'm growing all this following, and it wasn't translating. It doesn't mean that the clients were coming in because all my strategies were focused on growing your following, growing your reach, but not growing your connection. And the difference between someone actually really wanting to work with you or not is that connection and it's that trust. And so I also support women to focus more on other strategies that isn't just focused on reach, but actually building that connection and trust, predominantly by leveraging other people's audiences. So you already have that borrowed trust from someone else. So I always say it's kind of like if you go to the bar and there's a random guy at the bar and he goes, "Can I buy you a drink?" And you're like, "No, random man, I don't know you, I don't trust you, I don't want a drink from you." And I always say, I'm assuming you're not single and he's not like a hot guy, you're out looking for a date. But then if like, my friend Angelina comes up to me next to the bar and said, "Oh my gosh, I have this amazing friend Sam. I really want you to meet Sam. Sam's such an amazing guy." And Sam goes, "Oh, hey Louise, can I buy you a drink?" I'm like, "Yeah." Because I trust Angelina and she's told me you're a good guy, and so I feel like I could trust you. And so I can happily accept that drink. And so it's the similar kind of thing when you're accessing audiences and accessing that borrowed trust.
I love that. I love that. I think that one of the things that's so hard for people is to trust people. What would you say to that? Like, how do you get people to trust to work with you? I mean, I know you're borrowing people's trust and because of internet, like connections with others and things like that. But have you found that a struggle for you as when starting out as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So trust, especially now, I think is getting to an all-time low because yeah, there is so many people out there right now using social media for marketing, and you also with AI coming into is you don't know who's credible and who's not. There are lots of people out there who are great at marketing and so make a great deal of money, but not necessarily great at actually delivering results for their clients, right? But there's also amazing women out there who are really good at what they do, but rubbish at the marketing side of things, and so aren't making the money. But trust is, I do feel like, at this kind of low point at the moment. But I think that it's not just about borrowing trust, but in terms of building trust, I think there's a few key things, right? It's like being authentic in yourself, because the people who like you will just like you because you're being you, as opposed to having to put on this idea or illusion of who you think you should be. Because often people, even if not consciously, subconsciously can pick up on things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that might be something simple as all I can see for you, for someone, is their AI images and their AI content and their AI. I'm like, but who are you? Like
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, subconsciously I don't have that trust. Nothing against AI or using these things, but if you're using it to hide behind, people can typically pick that up. But also it's about genuine connection, right? And it's not just about me pumping out things in a one way kind of manner, which is what we're often taught, like just pump things out without actually starting genuine conversation, without actually trying to get to know someone. Do they even have the problem that you solve? Or you're just trying to like sell, 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 right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think trust is about actually just being human, building real connections with people, and letting them see who you are.
I love that. I love that. One of the things, like you said, it's my husband says it. It's like I want to see the real, like the real you, not the real. Like, like 30 seconds of, he says like I'll introduce him to somebody. He goes, that person did not look like all their reels. Like it's a totally different person, and it's true. It's so you got to be authentic. And a lot of people find it hard to be authentic, or just they're scared, so scared of, like we said, the judgment, and they're hiding, and the visibility is a big piece. And I found that the more that you tell your story to people and they understand who you are and where you're coming from, and show that how far you came, like I could go around and say, "Hey, I'm a six-figure income earner. You need to, I built my business. You need to work with me." Or I can say, "Hey, I found that I have more connection when I tell people, hey, you know what? I was born on the projects. I was born in poverty. We were getting government cheese. We were getting food stamps and all that. And like, this is real. Here's a newspaper article that came out from the day I was born, because I was like physically born at home." And like, so then people understand, like, oh, like you really did make it. It wasn't handed off to you. And a lot of times when we sell these things, or, we're coaching people and we're trying to tell, or we want the buyer, in order to get their trust, we got to tell them the story. Like, hey, you know what? I've been where you've been. I know your struggles. Let me tell you what, you don't have to tell them your whole life story, but you can tell them a big significant piece of it that they can understand. Like, okay, I can trust this person because I've seen, for us, we've lost a lot of things. When my husband became disabled, we lost a lot. I had to build up our income again. It was a lot of things. And when I start telling people, this is how I did it, they're like, oh, so you really know what you're talking about. And I think that that is how we can be relatable. But it took me a long time to stop hiding myself, to say like, hey, this is my story. When I tell people that, like now they're like, I never knew that. People who knew me for years, and it was like, you just see me in one area, but you got to understand there's a story behind it. What would you say?
Absolutely. And I think it's true, and it's true for all of us, like myself included. When I started my business, I definitely was just like, I just put out content. I'd be consistent, but I put out content like 3 ways to do this, 5 ways to do, like it was devoid of who I was, because I was so afraid, and because I had all those judgments, right? Of like, well, I can't really do reels because I'm not like all those other beautiful women who look really glamorous. Like I'm a mum. I'm usually
Mhm.
covered in like vomit and changing nappies. Like who's gonna actually want to watch me and watch my life? And or I think, well, people are going to judge me for not really knowing what I'm talking about because I'm not successful enough, right? We have this illusion that even though we've just started our business, that, well,
Mhm.
we're not successful enough, right? And you won't be when you first start because you've just started the journey. It's just
Mhm.
the same as like you want to run a marathon. You don't, start on the line and go, oh, well, I haven't won the marathon yet. Of course you haven't, right? You haven't got
Mhm.
there yet. But we have
Mhm.
this expectation of ourselves and this comparison where we go, oh, I don't know, I can't really show up and share. But I think also there is this line between like sharing who you are and being authentic. But also what I see a lot now is sometimes people are using the platform not to necessarily show who they are, but to almost weaponize this kind of victimhood. You
Mm.
see a lot now of like people posting saying, I'm just being authentic and sharing to be human, but actually what they're sharing is a lot of boo hoo hoo, my life is terrible, look at what this person's done to me, not from the perspective of what have I learned from this experience, right? But like still being in that sense and still being in that and sharing in that capacity, which I think will get you a lot of other people who are perhaps in the similar situation who want to cheer you on, right? You're the victim and I want to be the victim, so we'll be victims together, but not necessarily going to get you the clients who want to actually move forwards and progress.
Yes, I would agree. And I love how you said, there's people that when something negative happens to you and you post it and saying, "Oh, like this that happened to me. This type of stuff always happens to me." You're going to be, or this person did this to me. And then like a restaurant, say you're going to a restaurant and you have a bad food experience and you make a comment and you post it on a group, a Facebook group or something. Everybody else is going to comment, "Oh yeah, last time I went to that restaurant, they did this and this," and all the negative people come out, right? But what you can say instead is, "Hey, I didn't, using a restaurant was probably a bad analogy, but you could say, I learned to really pay attention to the foods I order. I didn't feel too good after I ate something. Maybe I need to check on my diet," something like that. Because it could be your diet that caused you not to have a good experience, right?
100%.
But that's the thing, and I love how you said it's like, what did I learn from this experience, and how can I post or say that in a better way? Because we all have had things happen to us, but what are the lessons we've learned from them? And I always think that everything that happens to us is for a reason, and we may not even know why, and we may figure it out years from now, or maybe when we leave this earth, we'll hear from our divine power of why this particular thing happened. But it's all lessons, and I think as we go through these things, these lessons that we learn, it's fueled to help others as well. It is giving us the tools and resources to help others. And if you don't learn a lesson when something happens to you, I think that is, you got to figure out why are you not learning a lesson, and you can't just be like, for me, born in the way I was born, and all the things that happened to me, it gave me the feel to become, get my degree. It gave me the feel to, have a good, an income, provide for my family. It was like that driving force. I could say, "Oh, I'm just going to live on, public assistance and do all these other things because, that's the way it should be because that's how I was born." You know what I mean? It's just, you got to change your mentality on things.
100%. It's really about making that decision, and I love that you decided to choose something different for yourself, because it's very easy to fall into those patterns of, this is just how my life is and this is how it's supposed to be, as opposed to challenging that and going, actually no, I want to choose something different.
Would you mind sharing your story of the story that happened to you, and how you were hiding and all that? Would you mind?
Absolutely. So a large part of why I started focusing on visibility for women is because I had to go through such a journey for myself in terms of feeling safe to be visible, and not just in terms of my business, but in life as well. And so for me, look, I always say I'm so young, but quite some time ago, but I think this is things that carry with us, right? So a lot of my clients as well, a lot of the fear of showing up and being visible is not necessarily something that happened yesterday. But so for me, it was back when I was 18, and I'd always had this passion for going abroad and just this calling to go and volunteer in Africa. And so that's what I did. And while I was there, obviously I had many beautiful lessons, learned many beautiful people, but I also made friends with some people who I believed were my friends. And so on the way back to the UK, where I'm originally from, I had a transfer in Amsterdam. Now, prior to leaving, I'd had this big, holy rucksack because I'd been traveling around East Africa. And my friends had said, "Hey, well, you can just use our suitcases." And I'd known them for almost a year, and I'd met their families, and I was like, yeah, these are, good people. And so that's what I was like, great, because my stuff is not going to stay inside this disgusting old backpack. But unknown to me, when I get to Amsterdam, I'm pulled over and they say, "Oh, we're going to search your bag for drugs." I remember at that moment, like just laughing in my head. I was like, this is going to be such a good funny story to tell everyone when I get home, like me being stopped for drugs. But they tested the lining of the suitcase. So I didn't even know it was there, and inside was cocaine. And at that moment, I was still in disbelief. I was like, oh, they're going to realize, like, I didn't know it was in there. I'm going to go home. This is going to be a very scary but hilarious story to everyone. But it didn't work out that way. And so I ended up spending 6 months in a prison in Amsterdam. And although the judges ruled they believed that I didn't know, which is why I got a much lesser sentence, but that I should have known. And also to stop other people from using the same story. And I just remember in that moment, up until then, I just 100% thought I was going to walk free. I thought, this is like the law, it's just, it's fair, I'm going home. And so when they gave me that verdict, it did feel like in that moment, like everything was over. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I'm never going to get a good job. I'm never going to, meet a wonderful person. Because, like, now I'm a criminal. Like, I'd adapt to this identity of, well, now you've told me I'm a criminal, and so I'm a criminal. And, like, in my mind, I'd build up this idea about who criminals are, which also changed when spending more time with people in prison. But before I left, I just kind of made this decision. It was so very that wasn't going to be my story.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was going to go and I was going to carry on with my life, carry on with the plans that I had. And I did. And I went and I put myself through university, interned at the United Nations, traveled, worked around the world. But part of me still held on to a lot of that fear. Like, what if someone finds out? What if someone finds out that I was like a criminal? What if people didn't believe me? What if they thought that I was that person? Or that they just thought I was so stupid? Because in my mind, I felt like, how could I have been so stupid to not know? Because that was the verdict that was given to me. It was like, you should have known. And although, it's a great argument, because if I could have known, I would have known, right? In my mind, I was like, how could I have not have known? How could I have caused all this pain to like my family? How could I be so stupid? And so I was so afraid that if I became more visible, especially in my business, that people would find out. And they would either decide I was a criminal, and so why would you trust me? Or I was so stupid, so why would you trust me? Even though it was something that happened like years and years and years before. And so it was this big journey for me to be able to actually face what I thought I'd gotten over in the past, because, my life was good and I got on with life. But also to be able to like forgive myself and release all of that shame that I felt. So now I can have this conversation. I feel like I have this conversation as if we're talking about what I did the other day at the shops, right? It's no longer that emotional feeling. And I feel like it's the same for a lot of women who are afraid of being judged. They usually have some kind of story behind why they feel that way, and they still have that emotion that lives inside them. So whenever there's a possibility of someone saying you're ugly, right? Because at some point in their life they've experienced a lot of pain where someone's told them you're just ugly and unlovable or any of these things, and so they re-experience that every time there's a thought that someone could say that. And so once I was able to heal a lot of that for myself, I was like, well, this is what is stopping women from being more visible. This is what's stopping women from releasing a lot of that fear and shame of judgment or rejection. And I know that for them on the other side of that, they can just go on and they can grow themselves because they're no longer holding on to that emotion.
I think that that's such a powerful story, and I'm so thankful that you shared that with my audience. And I know that you recently came out in a magazine and you shared that story as well, the Force magazine. And Cindy Whitman, who created that, she's been on my podcast, and so it's just a powerful thing. Is that we all have stories, and nobody is perfect. There's only one person that ever walked this earth that was perfect, and that was Jesus. If you're a believer, but the thing is that we have to let go of just the constant, like the judgment. And if you have a story, start sharing that story. Talk to people you trust. If it's something that you think about often, then that's something that you're hiding from. And if it happened years ago, that story, there's something on there. There's something that you need to, share your story so that you can get that and figure out how you can heal from that and get that weight lifted off. Because, I just was talking to somebody the other day. I didn't know that when you have anger shows up in your liver and like or your organs, and there's like when you have just different things that happen to your body when you were suppressing, and we're hiding and we're not being visible. It can affect our health, and though you can get through it and you think you're pushing through it, you may be sacrificing and not really showing up for your business and have that fear. And since you started sharing that story, how has your business changed? Was it affected negatively, or did you just blossom up?
I feel like I blossomed up,
Mhm.
and I think a part of it also is because that was the main thing holding me back from growing my visibility. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't just sharing my story, it was that I just showed up differently. And
Yes.
so I was a lot more free, even if I wasn't talking about that experience, to actually just show up as me and to be like, okay, like there's nothing now that I feel that I'm worried about people saying about me, because I've gone through that experience and I've healed those stories. And so I have never yet have anyone reach out and go, oh no, look, actually I shared the story once, and it was an old man. This wasn't online, it was in an in-person event, who was like,
Hmm.
oh, didn't you hear of the Bali Nine or something like this? I was like, no, I lived in the UK. But also,
Hmm.
for me, in that experience, I never would have thought that was something that could happen to me, right?
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is when he kind of went, you were so silly, I didn't feel anything about it. And that for me was a very empowering moment. And it was almost like the universe was testing, right? It was like
Uh-huh.
your biggest fear is someone says you're really stupid. And so it's like, oh man, says, oh, that was a bit silly, really stupid. And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't feel anything about it. So I think that for me was the only time, but mostly people were quite supportive.
And I think that that's what we need to be. We need to be supportive. I mean, we've all, for you, it was unknown. And I honestly like now, and I haven't traveled since we first talked about this couple of months ago. But I'm like when we first talked, but I was like, if I ever go and travel anywhere, I'm going to be making sure, like you go to retreats, you go with friends, like you share your hotel, your luggage is all the same. Like I just don't know. I'm going to be making sure my luggage is good with all my other friends because you just don't know now, right? But
No, and you don't. And like at the time, as I said, there was no inclination. I'd never
mhm,
seen them with drugs. I'd never seen them with, dodgy people. There'd never
mhm,
any kind of conversations around this. And so for me, it was quite a surprise. And also, I was 18 and I never thought anyone would want to do something like this to me.
mhm.
And so you just don't look for it. And I definitely am a lot more aware now, especially when I travel. I'm like, I'm locking my cases, like, because it does happen.
Mhm,
I'm also really grateful in the sense when I look back in hindsight that I was stopped, because often I kind of think about, well, what would have happened if I'd gotten through?
mhm,
Like, what was waiting for me the other side? Because at some point, someone's going to want to get those drugs, right? Like,
mhm.
what would have happened the other side to me? And so that's also for me, I can kind of reflect and go, well, the best thing was that I ended up being found out, and
Mhm.
arrested and held there rather than going all the way through. Because what would have been waiting for me?
Exactly. And that's a powerful way to look at it. And when you were stopped, did you have to stay in Amsterdam that whole time between the trial and everything? You were had to stay there, or did you get to go back home and then like how did that all work?
No, no. So I was held there, yeah, because it was obviously a different country. So I was there for 3 months before the trial, and then I had to sit. Once I had the trial, it was serving the other 3 months. So I was halfway through, but I think, like I said, the first 3 months was not so hard because I had that belief of, well, I'm just, as soon as the trial's here, I'm going home.
Mhm.
And it was definitely that last 3 months where, again, it wasn't the having to be there for the extra time. It was the what happens after this. Like, what
Mhm.
happens when I'm released? How are my family going to view me? How are my friends going to view me? What life will I live after this?
And did you ever connect with those friends? Did they ever contact you or anything after that?
No,
those supposed
miraculously,
friends?
all of their numbers stopped working. And although we gave all information we could to the police, they weren't going to pursue it because it was in another country. It was going to be, it was
Mhm.
hard. And for them, the amount of, drugs was, I like small fish, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
not like I was the top dog of the drug. And they had
Yeah.
someone, they were like, well, we can say we've caught someone for this, ticked
Mhm.
our box, moving
Yeah.
on. And so, I don't think anything actually, well, I don't know, but I don't think anything happened after that.
Yeah. What a powerful thing though to go through. You're in a foreign country and you're stopped and you have all of these things. You're in a foreign prison, all of these things that it's just such a life-changing experience, but I love the outlook that you took on it. And I love how you're helping others and coaching others to stop hiding and to be visible, because when we're not visible, it can set us back. Like we're not showing up as a full you. You're not showing up to your full potential. And we have a lot of great things that we can do in our lives. The thing is, we have to go after it and stop hiding.
Absolutely, we really do.
Well, I love all the things that you shared. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your podcast and what you share on your podcast so that my viewers can connect with you on your podcast as well.
Absolutely. So, my podcast is available on YouTube and Spotify, and it is Visible and Unstoppable. And it's really designed to support women in business in not just strategies for visibility, but also it supports them in life. And so, typically, what happens is I'll have a common theme among my clients of where they're struggling in their life, and then I'll get experts to come on in. And so, although there is a lot of talk around business and strategies and things like this, so we also touch on, relationships and health and all of those things, because realistically, you are not just your business, right?
Mhm.
You are all of these things, and all of these things impact your ability to run your business.
Yes, I think that's so important because I love how you said that it's just not just your business. There's so many things, your household, we're mothers, we're entrepreneurs, we're doing all the things, and we got to have balance and at times and like just kind of figure it out. But what's something you can do in your business, a strategy can also be help you in your household and all of the other things that we have in life. And so I think it's really important. If you could, if people wanted to work with you, what would be the best way they could connect with you to work with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook, Louise Kirk. I am somewhat on Instagram, but those of you who know me, I'm not heavily there, to be honest with you, because it's not my strategy. You can find me at louisekirk.com.au. Yeah, those are the good places.
All right. Well, I'll definitely have those links in the show notes so people can connect with you,
Mhm.
and definitely link up your podcast and all the, for the YouTube channel and Spotify as well. But one of the things that I always like to ask my guests is what is a word, a phrase, a book, or some type of action, anything that comes to your mind that they can do today in order to help them refine and shine?
The thing that comes to my mind and or it's always stayed with me, I've read this book by Viktor Frankl. And so he was a Holocaust survivor. And the book was called Man's Search for Meaning. I recommend the book, but the quote that he said, something along the lines of, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. And that for me has resonated in so many ways, because we're not always in control of what happens in our life. We're not in control all the time. And so, in those moments, though, what we do get to choose is how we want to show up, how we're going to feel about the situation, not just in that moment, but also who we want to become afterwards. And so, for me, that's always had such a powerful meaning.
I love that. I love that. I think that's so important is, we always want to control everything. And sometimes we just have to surrender and say, like, hey, this is not, we can't. And how can we come out of it? I think we've talked before when I used to travel a lot and I used to get delays and delays. And at first it was like, oh, I'm going to be, sometimes where I wouldn't even get home until the next day because of delays. But I was like, I just learned to surrender and learn that no matter what, like there's a reason for everything and just let it happen. And I have met, because of those delayed flights, for example, I have met so many people, so many people. And I think that every delay or everything that we're
once we release control, I mean, yes, you have to like take action. You have to, make sure that you're doing the things you need to do, but stop getting angry. Like if you out driving and there's a bunch of traffic or there's this or that, like don't have that anger, and just like, okay, I'm gonna get to where I need to get to, I'm gonna handle what I need to handle, or if this happened or that happened or whatever it happens, it's for some type of reason, and just release it. So I love that. I definitely will pick up that book to read it. That's such a good quote. Was there anything else you'd like to share before we log off?
I think that's mostly covered everything that I could think of. But for those of you, if you are out there and you're a woman listening, that just because you might be afraid of something right now, it doesn't mean that that has to be what it is. It's not a part of who you are. It's ultimately something that you can change. And so I meet so many women who are like, they'll just settle because they think that's just who they are. They're like, well, I could never do this because, or I'm too afraid of this judgment, so I never will. But knowing that is just a story that you hold, and like any story, we get the chance to actually rewrite and change that if that is something that you want and it's holding you back.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, Louise, for being such an amazing guest here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refine and Shine. We hope you find valuable insights and inspiration to fill your journey of continuous improvement. Remember, the key to success lies in refining your processes and letting your inner brilliance shine. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us reach more listeners like you who are eager to refine and shine in all areas of life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and additional resources and behind-the-scenes content. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to reach out with any suggestions, questions, or success stories you'd like to share. As we wrap up, remember that the power to transform your life lies within you. Keep striving for growth, embracing change, and seeking opportunities to refine your skills. Together, let's continue to shine bright and make a positive impact in the world. Until next time, keep refining and keep shining.